Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Growing Social Now. I'm your host, Barbara Rozgonyi, and I would invite you to listen to us wherever you like to hear podcasts and make sure you click subscribe so you don't miss any exciting episodes like this one with Allan Schoenberg. Hi, Allan.
Hey, Barbara, how are you? It's so good to talk to you again.
It is. And one of the things that I love about the show, and really why I started it, is so I could talk to people I haven't talked to in a long time that I really admire. And Allan and I go all the way back to the beginning of Social Media Club Chicago, when Allan was the host extraordinaire as I'm not sure what your title was with CME Group, but you were the guy who had the keys to the party center. So,
we had a good location and it was great for convening people, but also that was when social media events were much smaller, as you recall, right?
So yeah.
It was manageable.
We were getting started, although we did usually manage to fill the room at your place. We had some really good parties there, like the Mad Men party.
The Mad Men party was great.
Yeah. I mean, so some of my best times, I think, were at the parties you helped us with, and it was always great seeing you. It's great to see you now. And since then, I know you've gone a few other places. You've been at, let's see, NASDAQ, Bloomberg, and now you want to tell us about what you're doing now?
Yeah, I'm at a global law firm, international law firm, Vincent and Elkins.
Okay.
We have offices throughout the country, Tokyo and London, and cover a variety of topics all around infrastructure, white collar crime, litigation, renewable energy. It's a gamut of things that keeps me busy and is giving me an entirely different and new education on the world of law. So I've worked with lawyers my whole life, and every career I've been at, there's a good working relationship between communications people and the legal team. We've talked a lot about that in the early days of social media.
Oh yeah.
And right. So being at a law firm now and working with 700 lawyers who are, at my disposal is really giving me an interesting perspective on the world of lawyers and how they think from a risk management perspective. And it's been fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about 700 lawyers. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. And I've always admired you because you're one of the most professional communicators I know, but you always have like this Zen-like kickback. I don't know, just so relaxed about everything you do. And I remember when I saw you with CME Group and then NASDAQ, it was like, you just made it, it was like you were just there having a good time, but I'm sure there's a lot of pressure that goes on that we're not going to really get into all the details today. But I know one of the things we wanted to talk about is social media. I always ask the guests, what do you want to talk about? So the first thing Allan wants to talk about is how social media has evolved and why I think it's going to get more difficult. And I said, Allan, really? But I have to say, I agree. So can you tell us what you meant by that?
Well, I mean, what we've been using social media now for realistically 15 years at the most. If you think about social platforms, right? The blogging has been around for much longer. You can consider that a social media tool, but you think about the Twitter and Instagram, go into China and there's Weibo and there's all kinds of different tools. So they're still very new, very, very nascent technologies. I know they've matured quite a bit, but I do feel like there is just this constant evolution, right? The way you use Twitter today is not going to be the way you use it in a couple of years. The way you used Facebook years ago isn't the way you use it now from a brand perspective. LinkedIn is probably, from a B2B perspective, the one that's been the most consistent, the most sort of, regular tool that hasn't, I would say, changed a lot. But I think the evolution of the tools, I think the evolution, the way businesses think about them. I think when you think about data privacy regulations, laws, the bifurcation of these tools now between countries and regions, it's an extremely challenging job. I don't think that is going to ease up anytime soon. And then when you add on to that and layer on content and the way we use content, who would have thought, years ago, the way that content is disseminated now, if you think about TikTok and Instagram Reels, that takes an investment, it takes time, there's algorithms. Do you want me to stop?
I don't know. You could go
I don't know who's
on
crying
and
or
on and on.
who's tuned off the podcast already.
Well, that's the thing. And, when we did our panel for AMA Chicago, one of the things we talked about was just the burnout and all the struggles social media people have. And so I think it's a reality that we have to address.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Things have changed so much. And that's one of the things I love about social media is it's constantly evolving, but it can also be one of the most exhausting things.
Oh, so exhausting. I mean,
yeah.
I remember early days, it was easy to just schedule a post. A lot of the platforms said, just schedule a post and randomly. I don't know who can do that now because, you try to schedule something randomly and what you're posting today, a week, a couple of days from now might be the wrong thing to post. So there's this, I think I will just, layer on top of all the things I mentioned. And you just alluded to it, right? The pressure of getting it right, the pressure of being the first, the pressure of having the content go viral. These are not easy things to deal with, and we're all humans, right? So I think there's a lot of lessons to learn here about content management, about being a trusted advisor internally, externally on social media content, having a focus. These things can help alleviate all of the items we've already talked about, but it is, I don't see it as being a job that's going to get easier.
Yeah, I think it's I wouldn't say easier, but if you work for a company like yours that was awarded, I was reading, it's got the #1 ranking by Refinitiv for company and board representation for full year rankings, credited with advising on 39 campaigns in 2021. It's the 6th consecutive year that you receive the top ranking. So that does make things, I'm not going to say easier, but it makes it wonderful if you have that kind of company that you work for. But still, how do you keep going in this ongoing battle of content, thought leadership, brand journalism? How do you, this is a great story. So you've got one. Now, how do you keep at the top? And one of the things I've admired with you is wherever you've worked, you've always made the people at the company seem like superstars, at least to me. And I don't know if that's all you. Maybe it's because they're superstars anyway. How do we do that?
It's definitely not me. I appreciate the handoff. I find it a personal, I don't want to say challenge. I find it personally very rewarding to find the strengths in people and to expose those strengths in them, whether they're a product manager, a lawyer, a CEO. To me, that is, I always, Barbara, always go back to a saying that I've used for a long, long time. I probably picked up from an old manager of mine. But people want to do business with people. They want to connect with humans. They want to know what your hobbies are. They want to know where your strengths are, where you think things are going, where are problems. They want to connect with people who are really human. And I think that's just one thing that I've always brought into my jobs is to, work with people. And part of that is recognizing who they are, what they like, what they want to discuss, what they don't want to discuss, when you go into a meeting. So I find that to me is incredibly rewarding with the job that I do.
And I think that one of the other things we're going to cover is the mindset of today's top communicators. And you really are at the top. And I think what's really nice what's really nice about being with you is to be able to talk to someone who is serving at that level of the profession. So what kind of insights would you give to folks that may not be on the top? They want to get there, but the people who are really trying to adopt a kind of mindset that will give them that kind of edge that you seem to have?
My mindset really shifted when I went to grad school, and we'll go back a bit. My undergrad degree is in economics. So I studied labor economics in particular in undergrad. So I enjoyed learning more about economics and behavior of people and so forth. And then I got into this wild world of communications and PR and marketing, and I had no formal training. So
really, that's amazing. Natural
No,
born talent there. I
I
don't know.
I had some summer internships while I was in college, so I didn't go in
Uh-huh.
blind after school, but I really,
Mhm.
I was competing with people that had journalism degrees and marketing degrees, and
Mhm.
part of it was I was grateful for some great uh, professional connections I had early on, but I just realized that as I was getting more experience in the profession, and I was looking at people that I admired, I wanted to get there, and I just knew I wasn't there. So
Mm.
for me, it was a pretty easy decision, that I had to go back to school, and I wanted to
Mhm.
get a master's degree in the profession that I was in, so I understood it. So I went to Syracuse University, got my master's degree in communications management. Probably the best decision I made. And I always I tell people when I students in particular, when I've talked to them, is I went into that degree program with the mindset of, I'm a I'm a communicator in a business, and I manage the communications. I left that program with the mindset of, I'm a business professional doing communications. So, I viewed my job very differently. Of how do I what does the business need, and how can my skill set and how can my thinking move the business forward. And I just think that that propelled me to just a different level. And
Mhm.
I've always viewed since then, when I go into meetings or when I'm thinking about things at work, it's, you know who is the business trying to reach? Who are we talking to? What is the goal of the business? What are the objectives? Where do we want to be in 5 years? What does this business unit want to do to achieve success? Who do we need to reach out to? So none of that is really, what's the press release we're writing? What kind of social media content do we do? How's the website function? That to me is the afterthought. I want to understand what success looks like. And I think that for me, that mindset was a big difference in my career.
Yeah, and I think you're really speaking to the heart of communications. And I believe that with any company, communications is the most important department, center, whatever you want to call it, because if you get your communications right, then the whole company will flow better. Not everybody agrees though. So
Well, I agree with you. No, but I think you're hitting on something that's, a lot of business leaders would agree with you that their communication matters, right? How they're speaking with
Mhm.
investors, how they're speaking with staff, employees,
Mhm.
how they speak with each other, their
Right.
communities. That you bring all that together, and there's a very strong element of communicating what you're trying to achieve, for sure.
Right. So as things change, what kind of things do you think in terms of skills that marketing and PR people need today? Obviously, I mean, marketing tech, we could go for on
Oh,
and on for hours about
for
how many
sure.
different ways all of a sudden data has become a superstar marketing. So what kind of skills do people need to be successful today?
Yeah, great question. When we think about what 20, 25 years ago, it was, you know, communicators had to learn marketing, and
Mhm.
then, they became more ingrained in marketing. I remember, I think Northwestern University was the first university with the integrated marketing communications degree.
Mhm.
And that really changed, the way a lot of marketers thought, and but more so, I think a lot of way communicators and public relations people thought, because they get more into the marketing mix
Mhm.
and helped manage it. And then social media came along 10, 15 years ago, and all of a sudden PR people had to, put on their social media hat and learn it from a reputation standpoint. So, we continue to see this evolution. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Technology, comms
Mhm.
tech,
Mhm.
data analysis. I find myself more and more the last few years really trying to understand the data behind things. We went from, and part of this, I think, goes back to social media days, right? Clicks, likes,
Right. Yeah.
page views, all, I remember all those numbers, and everybody was so excited and high-fiving when you got, so many retweets on it and so many
Yeah.
likes. But then it's clearly evolved to, like, okay, what does this mean? What is engagement? We talk about engagement.
Right.
We talk about, who is looking at the, when you look at the data, who is behind it? Like, are they customers? Are they
Mhm.
employees? Are they partners? So I think more and more communicators are having to understand the data behind things, and all that leads to is analysis. So I think there's this shift more and more marketing, PR, even social media, even internal communicators, of really understanding the data and what does it mean. And I tell my team consistently, it's okay if the data shows you it's not working, right? Like,
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I would call it failure, right? But if it's not working, it's not working. You've learned something, so move on. What have you learned from it? Just as much as we like successful data, I'm okay looking at data that shows it wasn't successful. You tried and you learned, and that's, I think that's the thing. It's a learning and a takeaway to make you better, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
So the skills you need to know how to interpret data. Is storytelling still important, would you say, or writing? Is it?
Definitely, you have to tell. Everybody wants to hear a good story, right? When you still listen to people speak, whether it's in a media interview on TV or at a conference, the most engaging speakers have a story. They started somewhere, they ran into a challenge, they learned something, and that's here's where they are today. I think stories are definitely the way to get a message across, but it's hard. It's not. You can learn it, but it's definitely, I think, more of a natural skill.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I feel like, there are a lot of different stories, but the way that you frame it up and you tell it, you could have 3 different communicators tell the same story in a different way.
Oh, for sure.
So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then you also you kind of, where I'm going with this is, it's again, know your audience, right? So those 3 stories, 2 of them might not work with one audience, but the other one will. So you understand who you're talking with and know how to communicate to them makes a big difference.
It does. Yeah. So what does your team look like?
At the firm right now where I am, I have oversight of the media relations team. So core team, focused on, I would say 3 key areas. One, the legal trade press, super important for us from a recruiting standpoint, very important to us from, just connecting with other lawyers at corporations. Second is industry press. So as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot within infrastructure and energy. So understanding and connecting with the industry trade press. And then last is the business financial press, the Wall Street Journals, Financial Times, Barron's, that media is incredibly important to us. We want to talk to the C-suite, and they do. So the media relations team is part of my oversight. Social media, I have the social media team, internal communications as well. So, as you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts, any company. So connecting the dots internally is very important, knowing who's doing what. Part of what I talk about with the internal communications team is, our job really is to let others know who's doing what, so they can work with each other and find out and add on to it and build a cross-functional law firm. And then the website and the brand team are also under my remit right now.
That's full circle. Wow.
It is, yes, for sure.
So one of the things that you do is I'm going to guess this is how you deal with all the pressure, because there's a lot going on since you have the whole company on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Is you are an ultra marathoner or an ultra runner.
Yes.
And I saw on Instagram that you posted you finished number 20, which is over 50 miles. And it's one of the strongest races you've had in years.
Yep.
And so what I think that's fantastic. First of all, congratulations.
Thanks.
And as someone who's married to someone who is into ultra running, he's not doing as much anymore, but he has done it. I know what goes into those races.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to ask you is if you could tell us how that inspires you. And then I love your 3 rules of running in life. Heal yourself, love yourself. Well, I'll let you tell us what it is.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of takeaways from running and life. I started ultra running 7 years ago. I did my first one, and you know, I kind of caught the bug. It's definitely not easy. It's not for everyone, which I think is why I like it. I like a good challenge.
Yeah, it is 50.
Right?
It's over 50 miles, right?
Well, anything over a marathon distance.
Okay, so let's just stop a minute. If everyone's listening can imagine, first of all, just walking 26 miles and then running over 26 miles, that's a lot. So, and
Yeah.
I think you said this one took you 12 hours, almost 12 and a half hours, 12 hours, 22 minutes. So if you can imagine being out there and not just walking, but actually moving.
Yep, for sure. It's you know, 100 miles, 50 miles. It's kind of funny. So my sweet spot race is 50 miles. I love 50-mile races.
That's your favorite. Okay.
It's my favorite.
Oh, man.
I can do it in half a day. You know, I get, you know, plenty of rest. I can have a good meal after. 100-mile races definitely push me. It takes me, you know, well over a 24-hour period to finish.
Wow.
Moving. I think in a 100-mile race, I've slept during one of them. So there is this mentality of pushing yourself and knowing your boundaries and understanding where you are. But I mean, I could bore all of your listeners with life lessons from running, about knowing
my
yourself.
My husband would be excited, but yeah, but if you want to,
but I run with them.
I do think that if you want to just share, you know, how I think what's really impressive to me is the dedication and you go in knowing this is going to be a long haul. So for me, when I hear you say that, I think that sometimes we get so caught up, especially with social media. It's like, oh, it's only in the moment. It's only the tweet. And, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, this didn't perform well. But then I look and I say, hey, you've been tweeting for 15 years.
Yeah.
And you look up collectively what you've done. It's a long race.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk a little bit about, you know, how that mindset really fuels you for life in the long run, that'd be really exciting to hear your take.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it earlier. My three kind of rules of running life are, you know, heal yourself, love yourself, know yourself, and that's a huge takeaway that I've learned from running and all of the training I put into it, the lifestyle change I've made for it, and to apply that to my own life. I think there's a couple of big takeaways from one is consistency. You mentioned it, training, right? You know, everyone always says to me, gosh, you know, 100 miles, that must be so hard to do. And what's the hardest thing about running a 100-mile race? And the hardest thing about running a 100-mile race is getting out of bed every single day and just going to run 3 miles or 5 miles. Like just training your mind to get up and go run day after day after day is a huge challenge. And to do that for so long, you know, it to me is the hardest part about it. Running the race is difficult and there's definitely challenges to it, but just doing it day in, day out, just like your job, social media, as you mentioned, right? Like it takes a mindset. You know, just getting to do it. Two, the other big takeaway I have really learned from running is, you know, it sounds so obvious, Barbara, but it's, you know, something's going to go wrong. There isn't a race that I've run, you know, 50 miles, 100 miles, 100K where something didn't go wrong. I remember I ran a 120-mile race.
Oh, wait, stop. You ran 100. How long did it take? How long did it take you? Like 4 days? No, it took you.
No. I didn't finish this one. I got 82 miles and the weather was so bad they canceled the race. But
oh, look at you.
but at mile 9, I was crossing a river and one of my trekking poles broke in half.
Oh, shoot.
So I had to finish the rest of the race. I got as far as I could with like 1.5 poles. You know, I've been in races where I've run out of water and I've got, you know, 3 or 4 miles to go and I have no water.
Wow.
I no hydration, or, you know, there's all of a sudden a rainstorm, you know, and I've got to stop and get my raincoat out and put it on. There's just always something. There is no perfect race, you know, at least at my age and where I'm at. But, you know, so you have to prepare going in that, you know, you're going to have to deal with something. You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
You have to do. So again, that mentality and using that for, you know, your professional life in general, which is where I go back to the, like, loving yourself, right? You can't be too hard on yourself. You have to adjust. Things happen. And I've learned that that for me is a big takeaway. Don't be so hard on yourself. Like, you'll go back to my things about the data and learning from data. Not everything works. There's going to be times that fail. It's okay. So when things go wrong in a race, I can't get mad. It's okay. It happens. What are you going to do? Something goes wrong at work. Okay. How are you going to adjust? What are you going to learn? So that to me is another big takeaway. And then I think the other big takeaway for me is the ability to just cut off from the world, right? So unplugging, I cannot tell you how great it is for a number of reasons. One, you build a lot of trust with your team. I'm out for 2-3 days, right? Or a 50-mile race. My last 50-mile race was on a Friday. Like, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, went to the race, started the race. Like, I wasn't working all day. So you have to obviously learn to trust the people that you work with, that they're just going to get the job done and they don't need you. It's okay. But then just unplugging from the world. It to me, the ability to, like, have solitude and, focus on me, going back to the heal yourself, know yourself. That is a big takeaway too from the running component of it, which I love. I think we've taken up half the time talking about running. Are you sure this isn't a running podcast?
Yeah. I keep telling my husband he should start a running podcast. I've already got it down. But I think, there are a lot of really good lessons there. And I think if you look at as a communications person, we're usually the first ones on the front lines when something goes wrong, and we're called in right away. So, something is going to go wrong. It's a long race, and I love the way you can get out with solitude. And one of the things I love about what you post is your time in nature. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your relationship with nature and how that helps you do your job?
Yeah, these races are, again, I'm super lucky that I can explore the country and run races all over the place. I love going to Utah. I'm going to Utah at the end of June. I'll be running a 50-mile race in Bears Ears and Canyonlands.
Ooh, nice.
It's just stunning. I've run around, it's a full circle around Mount St. Helens. That was amazing.
Oh, wow.
I live, about 20 miles north of Manhattan, and I'm very, very close to Rockefeller Preserve, which has 54 miles of trails. So to just be outside, and particularly when I run early in the morning, I have that whole park to myself, which is, to me, just amazing. Usually I see one or two other runners. They probably also think they have the park to themselves. But it's just, the peacefulness, quiet, being able to appreciate nature is, something that I feel very grateful for.
Yeah, I do too. When we moved to North Carolina, I kept saying, I want to be closer to nature. I didn't know what that meant, but boy, it's great to get out and walk on the Greenway every morning.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I think it slows you down.
It does. Yeah.
And to your point, you just made about, communicators being on the front line of things. I can't imagine, there's no other job that's more on the front line than social media. You are getting real-time alerts, seeing things in real time. Then you have to act and alert people. And who do you talk to? Like, it can be a fire drill. And I encourage my team. I always tell my team, like, if you're out, you're out. If you want to check in, that's your choice. But I don't expect to hear from you. Everybody needs to check out. You need to refresh the batteries, as they say.
Now that is a good boss. Yeah, I love that. So where can people find you on social media, Allan?
Oh, like you said, I've been on Twitter for 15 years. I love the bird. It's just such a great platform just for connecting with people, having fun. I think that it's challenging. 140, or we're at 280 characters now. I remember 140. I always go to 140.
I'm still stuck on that. Trained. Yeah.
It's super fun. I've always enjoyed it. I think it's a fascinating tool, and it's one of those things where, like, again, you just have to step away from it. I don't get alerts from social media anymore, so I'm not in the trenches every day. But I very much like Twitter. It's a good written medium, and again, I think the challenge of writing for Twitter is really hard. You're basically, synthesizing thoughts into 2 sentences, 3 sentences,
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
word, or even emojis.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's a great way to practice. I love using Twitter as just a practice tool on how to
Mm-hmm.
write content and write headlines and see what works and see what
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work. So I'm fortunate there. So Twitter is great. I like Instagram. It's a good visual medium. It's really interesting to, to see people's travel photos, but there's some, photography. I've always been a huge fan of photography. I wish I had taken more photography classes, but I love following a lot of photographers on Instagram. I think it's a great platform for that. I follow, people on TikTok. I think TikTok is pretty funny. It's interesting how it's shifted into, I follow a lot of medical people on TikTok, which I think is interesting. I follow a lot of
wow.
philosophers on TikTok,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
professors on TikTok. It's an interesting platform. I don't go on it very often, but I like it. But Twitter for me is, I don't know, I like Twitter. And then there's LinkedIn. I mean, there's always LinkedIn. That's kind of been the bedrock of my professional platform.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you can follow some great people, great content. It's a great business intelligence tool.
Mm-hmm.
Topics, people, ideas, issues. It's another good one. So, but I don't live in these platforms like I used to. I don't run social media anymore. It's easier for me to like step back from it and just kind of follow things and not really engage on a lot. So it's different for me.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of nice, just to kind of step back and post what you want, enjoy what you want. It's interesting the way you use TikTok. So there is a lot on TikTok besides people dancing around and acting funny, although that is entertaining. So yeah,
it's probably my generation. I don't get the lip syncing thing, but there's a couple. There's a guy that talks about oil and oil production. It's really, really fascinating. I think there's just interesting ideas, and it's short snippets. So that's the other challenge with social, right? It just continues to get more brief and more brief and more brief.
Exactly.
So
oh my gosh. Wow. Well, we covered a lot here, Allan, and I often think about our fun days at Social Media Club Chicago and our after parties and how we would just have shop talk about what was happening in communities online and in real life. So it's been great catching up with you and getting your take. And so when I end my interviews, I always like to ask, what is your word of the day? So what is the word you would like to leave us with?
Word of the day. I'll go back to, my running analogies, right? So a word I always go to, and when I talk about running, is resilience.
Ooh.
And being a resilient person, not so the point of where you're so stoic that you hide everything and I'm not going to let anything hurt me, but resilience from the standpoint of using it as a learning feeling and a learning tool on weaknesses, strengths, understanding the way things are, and feeling them a little bit more. So resilience to me is a good word, especially when I'm running and I'm in a lot of pain. So do you run through it? Do you stop? How do you assess it? What's the threshold of resilience? I think, that mindset for me, and, also, goes into work too. You don't want to push yourself so much and do too many things, but, you're going to have days where you're going to have to work really, really hard. And I'm not talking about running. So it's, resilience is a good word. Good word.
I love it. Well, it's a great point to end on. And thank you, Allan, for being my guest today.
Thanks for having me.
I don't know how long it's been since I've seen you, but a while. And and it's good to know we can pick up right where we left off.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I look forward to continuing the conversation. And to everyone who listened in, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this interview. And I invite you to like and subscribe to Growing Social Now, wherever you like to find your podcast. This is Barbara Rozgonyi. I am your conversation host, and I look forward to continuing our conversation. Bye for now.